Hello friends, Bill here. I wanted to show you the process I go through to clean out the inside of the body of a featherweight. This here is 1947 machine Constance. I'm restoring this for a customer and I've got it all apart. This one, the paint and decals are in quite good shape. It's going to polish up very, very nicely. I'll show you that in a second video. This one's about how I clean the internal parts of the body. So this is a very typical one. I've got everything off the body except for the lower shaft, the vertical shaft, and the top shaft. Everything else has come out of here. If I'm going to strip and paint the machine, I take those shafts out as well. But since this one is going to be just polished up, I don't need to take those shafts out. But I do want to explain to you the process I go through to get the insides very thoroughly clean. So I'm going to first set up the camera a little differently so I can give you a close-up view, show you exactly what it is that we're going to be cleaning. Then I'm going to move over to my cleaning setup here and show you the tools and materials that I use to do the cleaning. And then we're actually going to go through the process. So bear with me. All right, so here's our machine, a little closer up view for you. So the very first thing I do, once it's totally apart like this, is I vacuum. I want to get all the dust and the easy dirt off first. So I've taken a vacuum, and what you generally find is there's a lot of dust and lint in the hook area. Sometimes crumbs and things are up in here. More often you get things down here where these gears are, and in particular, there's a lead sheath that protects the wiring going up to the light, and that's often covered with a white oxidized coating that accumulates over years. And when you take that out, a lot of that flakes off, and so the bits of white that you see all over here are from that oxidized coating that develops on the lead casing. So we got to get all of that out of there. You'll also notice there's quite a bit of grease on the gears. I'm just going to bring this up a little closer so you can see this. This is too much grease. This is the problem when you over lubricate, which is what a lot of machines, what I generally see is the machines are either dry because they haven't been lubricated enough, or they've been over lubricated. And over lubricating is bad because all of that extra grease does not provide additional lubrication. What it provides is an attachment point for dust and dirt and grit to stick to it and then get carried through the gear train. And that's not good. So when we're lubricating, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but when we're lubricating, the idea is to put just enough on and no more, because more just creates that attraction for dirt and grit. So we're not going to do that. The other place when I'm vacuuming, behind the motor, this area down in here is often very full of dust. So got all that cleaned out. So now the two areas where it's going to be most difficult to clean are up in here where these upper gears mesh. Here's the top of the vertical shaft that connects the upper and lower shafts. This is our horizontal main shaft up here, and it's gear that drives the vertical shaft. And getting in here and cleaning this all out is hard to do well, because you can't really get to the undersides of things. You can't really wash out all the grit and grime very well if all you're using are like swabs and little brushes and things to try to get in there. I find that the only way I can really get these clean is to use solvent. So I'm going to go through a multi-step process. You're going to see the whole thing. And then down here, access is a little better. But again, there's a lot of grease and things, particularly where the vertical shaft is behind this gear. Getting all that clean, getting the grit out of that bushing, getting the entire neck here cleaned out of all its accumulated grit. This is a 1947 machine. So there's a lot of years of grit that's built up in here. We want all of that out. We want this thing to be really clean so that when we lubricate it, we are not doing that in the vicinity of any remaining grit that can provide friction and wear and tear on the drivetrain. So it's really important to get this thoroughly clean. All right, so I'm gonna move over here to our wash sink and show you how I do that process. Okay, so I'm at my old antique laundry sink here. It's actually made of concrete. I love this thing. I use it all the time. It's nice and deep, and it's impervious to all the solvents I use, so it works great for this purpose. I'm also going to be using this old enamel tub, nothing special, but I'm going to set this in the bottom of the sink, and I'll be able to put the machine across this, and as I'm using my solvent, I'll be catching all the solvent so I can recycle it and reuse it. And that's really important. I'll explain more of that in a minute, and you'll see it. And then these are the brushes I use. These are some of those El Cheapo paint brushes you can get for like, I don't know, 79 cents a piece or something. They're called chip brushes. And what I've done is, here's a brand new one, and you can see, I hold it side by side. I've taken scissors and I've given these a haircut. I've taken about 1/3 of the length of the bristles off. Some people go as much as halfway. That's okay. I think taking 1/3 off still leaves it supple enough, but stiff enough that it'll go in and dislodge the grit and the grease. So I've got just 2 sizes of that. I'm not going to be using this one. I've also got, this is actually a real toothbrush, and those work very, very well. But the other kind of brush I like a lot, these are gunsmith brushes, and I buy these in a 10-pack on Amazon, and they hold up really well. They're nylon bristles, so they won't damage anything, they won't damage the finish, but the bristles are considerably stiffer than a toothbrush. And they also have, you'll notice the way their shape is, sometimes this allows you to get into some of the areas around the gears and things better because of that notched cutout in the teeth. And then at the far end, there's a very narrow row of bristles, and this is really good for getting in some of the small spots where the head of a regular end of the brush or a toothbrush won't fit. So I recommend these very highly. And then the solvent I'm using is kerosene. Singer only recommends kerosene as the solvent to use on their sewing machines, and so that's all I use. It will not damage the finish, the decals, the shellac top coat, and it does a really good job of softening up all the old grit and grease and oil, and allowing you to scrub it out. Now this jug is almost 2 years old. It's got about, maybe 1/4 of it left. And I've probably cleaned, I don't know, 40 or 50 sewing machines with that amount of kerosene. And the way I'm able to do that is I'm recycling. So this is my recycled kerosene. So as I'm washing, it's all being caught in this pan. And when I'm done, I pour it back into a bottle like this. And the dirt and grit settles out. You can see it at the bottom here, and I don't even have to do anything to that. It's kind of hardened in the bottom. So when I pour this out, I kind of decant it, and that dirt will eventually build up enough, and I'll finally clean the bottle out, but that's okay. So you're really able to keep reusing the same kerosene. Now, I've also got this little bottle. This is a condiment bottle that I took and I glued in a flexible plastic spout. I've got a nail blocking the end of it, and this has got fresh, clean kerosene taken right out of this jug. And I use this for my final rinse. So I'm using the old recycled kerosene for most of my scrubbing and cleaning. And then at the very end, I take my fresh, clean kerosene in this little condiment rinse bottle, and I'm able to rinse and use it. You don't need very much. So I'm using only small amounts to get a nice, clean rinse. And then that gets caught too. So I refill this jug from the new and all the old into here. And that's my process. So let me put this aside. And then the other thing is, of course, I'm wearing an apron. I've got eye protection on. I would normally put a face shield on, but I can't talk to you with the face shield on. It blocks the sound. And I wear rubber gloves. So it's not that hard. This is not particularly toxic. I mean, it doesn't have a great smell to it. So if you get it on your clothing and things, you're going to want to wash them. But it's not particularly damaging. If you read the material data sheet on it, they have some cautions, but this is not like working with a chemical paint stripper or some of those really nasty chemicals that you need to really protect yourself. So I'm going to bring the camera in closer, put the machine in here, and we're going to give it the scrub. All right, I have set my machine here into the sink. I have poured my kerosene into the bottom of my enamel tub, and now it's a matter of I dip my brush in the kerosene and I go up in here and I start softening the old grease. And I'm going to take the brush and kind of get a lot of kerosene in here, so it can start to do its work of softening the old dried up grit and accumulation and so forth. So initially, you'll notice I'm turning the shaft here, so I keep exposing different parts of the gears, and I'm brushing into the teeth of the gears, and I can go through the little side window here and brush at the top of the vertical shaft here. And I'm also taking and I'm brushing around the inside of the housing, because I want to get all the grit off the housing as well. So that's the process. This is my initial kind of get it soaking. I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to do the same thing on the underside. Then we're going to go back. I'm going to go back and do a more detailed scrub. But this is the initial, get some solvent on there and get it working. And any place I see grease, sometimes the grease flies off onto the edges here from the spinning action. And so I want to get all of that old grease softened up so it'll brush out. And the trick here is to get the kerosene on there and give it a couple minutes, just of this kind of work, and then go back with the stiffer brushes, those gunsmith brushes in particular, and we're going to clean that all up. Do the same thing in the nose. The nose is actually pretty clean on this one, but I'm taking and I'm going to get all the grit, particularly at the back, because the bushing, this is the main shaft that runs across the top of the machine, and there's a bushing behind this, and it's actually the one that when you put oil in this hole, you're oiling that bushing for the upper shaft. And I want to make sure I get all the grit and old oil, old lubricants out of that. All right, so that's my initial scrub. I'm going to do one more area, which is down here by the hook. I'm just going to get some kerosene going in there, and basically every place where there's a bushing or a shaft or a gear, I want the kerosene in there to soften things. The back of that bushing here, okay? And so now I've got the kerosene kind of doing its thing. You'll notice I'm standing over this tub. Everything I'm doing that comes off the brush goes back into that tub. Okay, so now we've got our kerosene on there. I'm going to switch to a gunsmith brush, and I'm going to get that gunsmith brush wet with solvent, and I'm slowly turning my shaft and cleaning the gear. And this is scrubbing all that old grit and residue out of the gear. And you don't have to bear down all that hard. You basically let the solvent do its work. Then I also take, and I kind of tip the bristles this way and spin the thing, and I can get all the old grit off the back side of that gear. And likewise, the cams where the connecting rods go, I want those points really clean as well. So you can see what the process is. I'm not going to bore you with. It'll take me probably about 15 minutes of scrubbing to get all of the places I want to get clean, thoroughly clean. And I'm going to turn sideways, and I'm going to work on the top of that vertical gear with the same kind of a process. And then I'm also going to take my other brushes, like the softer toothbrush, and clean. You'll see I'm just basically cleaning the whole upper neck to get all the old grit and dirt out of this machine. So again, we want this, at the end of this, we want this to be really thoroughly clean and no more remaining grit or dirt in the body. And so let me just proceed with scrubbing this, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, it's a few minutes later, and I have finished my scrubbing. I've been using my brushes, particularly the gunsmith brush and the smaller brush, and I have thoroughly cleaned out. My gears are now clean. All the cams on the upper shaft are clean. Around the bushings are clean. I've taken and very much scrubbed out the inside of the neck, and a lot of that you can do from the bottom. working this way with a toothbrush, and I've gotten that all clean, the shafts, around the bushings. These lower gears are all nice and clean. So the last step here on this part of the process is to rinse with clean kerosene. So I'm just using this little squirt bottle, and I'm not squirting very hard, and I'm not using very much, but I'm getting fresh kerosene to just take the last of whatever might be remaining in there and rinse it off and knock it into my pan down below. And I'm going to rinse the whole inside of the neck here. Then I'm going to turn it over and rinse my gears and rinse around the hook. Okay, and you can see I haven't used very much kerosene at all. But I've now knocked off all of the old kerosene and flushed off the last of the dirt. So this machine is now ready for the next step. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up here, and I'm going to get some of my blue shop towels, and I'm going to dry off as much as I can. And then I'm going to take it out to my woodworking shop where I have a compressor and compressed air, and I'm going to bring my setup out there, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to then take compressed air with an air nozzle at very high air pressure, around 100 psi, and I'm going to blast off all of the old kerosene. So anything that's remaining on here, this will dry the machine, and will get all the old kerosene off, and that will complete the kind of the wash step. And that's not the end of the process, but that's going to be a significant step forward in getting the inside of this featherweight body nice and clean. So bear with me. All right, so I've got the machine wiped down just with a couple of blue shop towels, and it's basically got most of the kerosene wiped off on the outside, and I wiped as best I could underneath. So this is ready for me to take out to the shop and use the compressed air step. But I want to show you, I took the kerosene that was in the bottom of this, and I dumped it back into my container, and you can see my container has actually got a little bit more than when I started. And that's because I used maybe a half an inch of this in doing the rinse, and that ended up in the pan and going back into here. So about half, 3/4 of an inch of this is the sum total of the kerosene that I wasn't able to recover. So I'm not using or not wasting much material at all. And by the way, kerosene is actually a petroleum product. It's refined from crude oil. It's really just an extremely light, very high viscosity, or excuse me, very low viscosity oil. And a lighter oil will dissolve a heavier oil, and that's what we're doing here. So kerosene actually lubricates the machine. So we're not putting anything into the bushings or anything that's bad for it. The kerosene is able to get in there because it's so thin and light. It can flow through the small passages in the bushings and around the gears, and it'll dissolve out the thicker, older grease. And it's leaving a small amount of lubricant behind, so it's not harming the machine at all. So don't be afraid of kerosene. And again, if you use a method like I'm doing here, you're not going to waste very much at all. So I'm going to take this out to the shop now. It's mostly dry, but the compressed air is going to really clean this and dry it out, and then we'll be ready to do a little bit of work with the rotary tool and some wire brushes to really bring everything to a great state. So bear with me. By the way, if you're wondering how I clean up afterwards, I've just poured the kerosene from here back into my jug. I didn't even use a funnel. This is a wide mouth bottle, so it's easy enough to do. And there was a bit of kerosene splash around the edges of my sink, and of course there was kerosene in my tub here. And I just use Dawn dish soap. Dawn's really good at dissolving grease, just like the bacon grease in your fry pan. Dawn will dissolve the kerosene residue. So I took a little bit of Dawn dish soap and hot water, put it in here, and sponged out the inside of my sink, sponged this pan out, rinsed it off. Same with my tools. So it's really quite easy to work with the kerosene and to clean up effectively afterwards. So I wanted to make sure you knew about that as well. Okay, I came out here to my woodworking shop where I've got a compressor sitting here, and I've pumped it up to, I don't know, 120 pounds, and I've got the regulator set at about 80 pounds per square inch. And I'm just using a hose with an air nozzle on it. And what I'm going to do now is just blow out the whole machine, and the air coming out at high velocity will blast off any little bits of remaining kerosene. So this will dry the machine. So I'm just kind of going through. I'll take special care to get into all the nooks and crannies. I'll go over it several times. Every time I make a pass over the machine, I'm getting more and more of the kerosene out. And after a couple of minutes of this, there'll be none left, and the machine will really be dry and kerosene free. And then I'll be able to take you back into my basement workshop, and we'll finish the cleaning process with the rotary tool and some wire brushes. All right, I'm back at my basement workbench. Here is the machine. Now, this is just after having washed it and with the kerosene and drying it with the compressor. You can see that the finish suffered no damage whatever. I mean, you really do not need to worry about damaging the finish with kerosene. In fact, if anything, it looks a little bit better because it's gotten the dirt off it. You know, you see some people say only clean the finish on a sewing machine with sewing machine oil. Well, kerosene is almost the same thing. Kerosene, as I said earlier, it's a very light oil. So when you use kerosene, you're doing the same process as cleaning with cotton swabs and sewing machine oil. Just it's just a slightly different name material, but it's effectively the same thing. So no worries about harming the finish. And now if we look underneath at the underside and the gears, in fact, I'm going to bring this over closer so you can see there. Look at how clean that looks. Now, and same thing up top with the gears here. Somebody else might say, you're done. That's beautifully clean. I would say that's about 98% of the way clean. And I'm just one of those type A people. I got to get to the 100%. So I'm going to do a little more work with the rotary tool and a few different tips that fit in different places. But mostly what I'm going to be working on are things like the journals, which are those cams that the connecting rods ride on, and the teeth of the gears. And I'll be orienting this in line with the teeth so I can really polish those teeth. This one as well, I can get in here and down underneath and just basically shine up and the bushing for the hand wheel. So I'm gonna spend some time here just brightening up those things. If there's any last residue that was too stubborn for the solvent, the kerosene, I'm going to get it out with the mechanical means, and then it'll actually go back out to the shop and get another blast of compressed air, because there'll be little bits of gritty, dirty dust from doing this work, and I want to get that all out of the machine. And then I'm going to show you, we're going to zoom in and look very closely. You're going to see that this thing is going to be spectacularly clean inside. So bear with me. All right, so I'm going to do a little polishing here. Hopefully this will show up well. I'm trying to hold this optimally for the camera, so it's a little more awkward than my normal working position, but I'm orienting. The teeth are going at an angle here, so I'm going to be angling my rotary tool to fit the teeth, and basically turning with my finger, my index finger and thumb, slowly turning the upper main shaft while I grind, or polish really. I'm going to reorient here a little bit, try to get the back side of these teeth. And now I'm going to use my finger on the front to rotate it because my right hand here is busy with something else. And now I'm working on the lobes of those eccentric cams. They're really called journals if you want to use the right term. I'm going to turn around a little bit here and get in there as best I can. All right, I'm really happy with that. I'm going to bring this over so you can kind of see that, but you can see all of that in here is nicely polished. And if I turn it around so you can see the teeth, those gear teeth look really good. So I'm going to repeat that process in here and underneath, and the bushing on the end here for the hand wheel and the shaft for where the hook goes on. And then I'm going to also go a little bit in here and clean out the nose. No need for me to just show all of you that on camera. This is the process, and I'll take it from here and I'll show you the finished product here when I'm all done. All right, so I have finished up. I'm going to just bring this in a little closer so you can see. Look at how nice all those gear teeth look on the upper shaft, the journals for the connecting rods. We've got our bushing cleaned. I've polished this spot here where the stitch length regulator pivot goes. On the nose, I've polished up the bushing and the assembly that the needle take-up works on, the hook area. And then underneath, look at how nice this looks. The gears, the counterbalance, the shaft, everything is all sparkling clean. And I don't really believe that you can get a machine, the inside of a machine body, clean like this without the use of kerosene, without the use of compressed air, without the use of a rotary tool, and a lot of scrubbing and a lot of attention to detail. But this is what we want. We now have every bit of the dirt and grime and excess lubricants and everything that accumulated in here since 1947 is out. And this is now really clean. We're going to be able to re-lubricate this, and it's going to be just like it came out of the factory. And we were able to do that without taking the shafts out. And I think that's a key thing, because that's a lot of extra work. And unless you're going to strip and refinish the machine, you don't need to go to that trouble. So I'm going to do a separate video on how I polish up the paint. It's probably similar to what you've seen from many of the others who do this kind of work. That's a little bit more straightforward. I'm just going to be using polishing compound and wax and some tools to buff it with. And this machine is going to be beautiful inside and out. And you can do this too. It just requires patience and a determination to get it right. When you're restoring machines like this, it's mostly about cleaning things, cleaning every part, cleaning the body. If you're not a type A that wants everything really clean, you probably aren't going to enjoy this as a hobby, because, to be honest with you, that's what it's all about. It's mainly cleaning. So learn how to do it well, and you'll be really happy with the results that you get. So thank you.